everyone. This is the first video of 2 videos going through dihybrid crosses and pedigree practice. So how this is going to work is I'm going to go through with you one of each dihybrid and pedigree practices as a class, and then you will be responsible for doing a dihybrid and pedigree practice on your own. If you are struggling with it, I do have a video that goes along with it, but I'm going to ask that you email me or set up office hours in order to access those. Okay, so we're going to actually begin with dihybrid crosses as a class. So when you are doing dihybrid crosses, initially it can look overwhelming because when we look at Punnett squares, we're typically utilizing a 4-square Punnett square or a mono hybrid cross, mono indicating 1. Dihybrid, di, the prefix means 2. So we're actually going to be crossing 2 traits. And this is really beneficial to find out the probability of those 2 traits. For example, last year with my students, I wanted to figure out what were the chances of my son being both colorblind and having male pattern baldness, okay? I wanted to know what the double whammy chance was, okay? So the very first step that you're going to do is determine those genotypes of those parents. The second step is you are going to determine the possible combinations of alleles during gamete formation, and this is done by foiling. Remember, if I have big A, little a, I have the possibility of having big A's or little a's in my eggs. If my husband has the genotype big A, the only thing that can be in his gametes are big A, okay? The third step is setting up your Punnett square, and then you're going to drop in those alleles. Put them together and then analyze that offspring, all right? So as a class, we're going to go through this. In order to determine the alleles for a dihybrid cross, you must distribute them evenly. Think FOIL from math, okay? That was an algebra class. The alleles for big Y, big P, little p individuals would be big Y, big P, big Y, little p, little Y, big P, and little y, little p. So for example, when you're looking right here, okay? Oops, sorry guys. Let's say that this individual has big Y, big P, little p. You could donate big Y, big P. You could have big Y, little p. You could have little y, big P, or you could have little y, little p. Those are the possible combinations of alleles, okay? Big Y indicates that you have yellow peas. Little y indicates that you have green peas. So those are those round peas within the pod, okay? The thing that holds those peas are called pods, all right? Big P is for green pods and little p is for yellow pods. And when determining the phenotypes, you check for individuals for both pea color and pod color, okay? We're not just looking at one or the other. We're looking at the combinations of all of them, all right? So let's go ahead and break down what are the genotypes of each parent. And I'm going to get out of the slide view, okay? So I want to know for the phenotype heterozygous for both yellow pea and green pods, okay? And remember up here, I gave you big Y is yellow peas, little y is green peas, big P is green pods, little p is yellow pods. So heterozygous, meaning they're going to have a dominant and a recessive allele. Hetero means different, all right? So the genotype of a parent with yellow peas and green pods that is heterozygous would be big Y, big P, little p, okay? And the possible allele combinations, we could have big Y, big P, big Y, little y, big P, or little y, little p. So let's write those down. Big Y, big P, we could have big Y, little p. We could have little y, big P, or we could have little y, little p, okay? And always be consistent. In this case, I'm going to put y's always before p's and always put the capital above the lowercase unless it is a different letter, okay? Now let's do green pods with yellow pods, okay? Green peas with yellow pods, okay? The only way to get green peas is to have little y, okay? Because it's recessive. Yellow pods, again, they have to be recessive. So it's going to be little p, okay? Didn't mean to separate those with a comma. The only combination we can get is little y, little p, little y, little p, little y, little p, and little y, little p. So the only allele combinations we can get, little y, little p. Easy peasy for all of those gametes, all right? So now you guys are going to be filling out this slide, and that's what you're going to be submitting as you're on your class assignment. But the nice thing is I'm going to go through this with you. So I'm going to go back to that present slide. Very first thing, we know we have yellow peas with green pods, big Y, little y, and we have big P, little p, yellow peas with yellow pods, big Y, little p, little p. Very first thing, we identified the parents' genotypes. Now we're going to see what are the possible combinations. Well, we have a yellow pea with green pods. That's going to be this pea right here, okay? So we could get big Y, big P. We could get big Y, little p. We could get little y, big P, or little y, little p, okay? Now for yellow peas with yellow pods, this individual right here, we're heterozygous for the P color, but homozygous recessive for the pod color. So the only pod color allele it can donate is a little p. However, some of those could have big Y and some of those could have little y, okay? So the very first thing is I'm going to drop those and set this up like so. Okay, very first thing, determine the alleles of the parent, the genotypes of the parents. Then what are the possible allele combinations? Now we're going to combine things. So for this individual right here in this corner, we get a big Y from this P, a big Y from this P, a big P from this one, and a little p from this one. Go ahead and set that up, okay? Let's do another one. Big Y here, little p, okay? Big Y here, remember the Y's are going to stick together, the P's are going to stick together. Always put the capital above the lowercase. Big Y, big P, little p. Moving on. Big Y, little p, little p. We're going to go ahead and finish filling that out, okay? Now, we determined the genotypes, okay? Anytime we're going to have one big Y, it's going to be a yellow pea, even if it's heterozygous, okay? It's just a carrier for green peas. However, with the peas, that P represents the pod color. So if it's a capital P, it's going to have a green pod. If it is a capital lowercase, still green pod. If it is homozygous recessive for P, though, it is going to have yellow pods. So if we were in class, I would probably have you pull out your colored pencils and shade these in, okay, to help us figure these out. You do not have to do this for this assignment, though, okay? And now you can see the chances of having all of the different allele combinations, okay? So now what we're going to do is type out the possible genotypes and then find those fractions, okay? So we know, remember, big Y is yellow peas, little y is green peas. So let's first just do the peas before we do the pods, okay? So what are the possible genotypes for yellow peas? Well, we could have big Y, big Y. Oh my gosh, that's very, very small. That's not gonna work. We could have big Y with yellow pods. Yellow pods are little p. So the only way we can get yellow pods is by having two little p's, okay? Now, you can also have big Y, little p, because it can be heterozygous for yellow peas because it's dominant, okay? We'll come back to that. Now, yellow peas with green pods. Again, for yellow peas, you could have big Y, or big Y, little y. But for green pods, you could have big P, or big P, little p. So you could have big Y, big P. You could have big Y, big P, little p. You could have big Y, little y, big P. Or you could have big Y, little y, big P, little p, okay? I know that's a little overwhelming, but you just got to break it down in chunks, okay? Now what about green peas with yellow pods? Well, green peas are going to be big P, or they can be big P, little p. Yellow pods, remember, are recessive, so they can only be little peas. So I'm sorry, the peas are Y's. So green peas, we know is little y, okay? Yellow pods are going to be little p, okay? Again, right here, all right? Last but not least, green peas, again, are only little y, but green pods is dominant. So it can either be big P, or it could be little y, big P, little y. So now let's figure out the fractions, okay? And this is out of 16. So let's first do this one because I think it's a little bit easier. Green peas with yellow pods. So we're looking for homozygous recessive for all. Green peas with yellow pods. We've got 1 and 2. So 2 out of 16 of those. 2 out of 16. Now let's go ahead and do yellow peas with yellow pods. Going back here, we can actually look at the colors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 of those. 6 out of 16, okay? What about green peas with green pods? 1, 2 out of 16. An easy way to solve this, 2, 4 plus 6 equals 10. 16 minus 10 is going to equal 6. Let's go ahead and check that. So we're looking for, forgive me, we're looking for yellow peas with green pods. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exactly right. 6 out of 16. Okay, now, yours is going to be a little bit easier, but let's talk through this. I'll do the genotypes with you. This is what you are going to do on your own. And if you would like to go over it, just reach out to me, okay? I am breeding dogs. Having 3 heads, big H, is dominant to having 2 heads, little h. Having chocolate brown fur, big B, is also dominant to having yellow fur. Cross a female that is heterozygous for both traits with a male that is also heterozygous for both traits. So let's do the female first. Heterozygous for both traits. Big H, big B, little b. Now, that means that this female is going to have 3 heads and chocolate brown fur, but she is a carrier for the recessive traits because she has those little b and little h. Same thing with the male. And I want you to figure out the allele combinations. Remember, big H, big B, big H, little b, little h, big B, little h, little b. And fill those out. Drop those allele combinations right here, and then fill out your chart. And all I want you to answer for me for this one is, I want to know, I'm selling these dogs, you know, I'm a dog breeder, all right? I'm not really, but you know. 2-headed yellow furred dogs. What is that possible genotype? And what is the fraction or the frequency? All right. Do not hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. If you'd like to go over this problem with us, just go ahead and set up a meeting with me or reach out. Thank you so much.